So I'm looking forward to getting into your story, um,
Okay.
the story about pizza and your story. So thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
You bet. So before we get into your story, I want to know, 4 years ago we were trying to figure out this pandemic. It was really entering its stages of hiccuping, but being around. How did you ultimately make it through that time period, and how did it change the way that you do things now?
Well, I mean, it was definitely tough because at the time we had a marketing agency, and I remember like half our clients needed more work and half our clients dropped off. Like we had places that just closed down. So it was like really a time of change. And so the thing that really kept me grounded was my family.
Yeah.
I mean, we were in quarantine. We walked every night. We played board games together. And it was like it was definitely a scary time, but at the same time, I felt like it brought us together.
Yeah.
And like we live life differently now since the pandemic.
Yeah, everything is totally different. Um,
Yeah.
so let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living right now. I'm going to
Mhm.
put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the curious kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you
Mhm.
answer that child?
I write beautiful books.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
So my dream was to work in advertising.
Okay. S-
Yeah.
So did you do any of that?
Yeah. So funny enough, I went to school for communications. I'm actually from Western Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I got my first job working in healthcare marketing. I was
Okay.
about 22 years old. And then I ended up working there for about 7.5 years. And then I launched a marketing agency, which I've had now for about 15 years.
Okay.
But I've been doing this like it's a very like, cutthroat, high pressure situation. And a few years ago, my family and I decided to move back to Pennsylvania because my dad had heart surgery. And I really wanted to like help my family. And at that point, I kind of changed a lot and I decided that I wanted to become more of a content creator. And mainly, I wanted to help my dad with his pizza place that my grandfather opened in 1960.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was a communications major. My first gig
Wow.
early on was doing desktop publishing for a home health agency.
Wow.
It was a consulting firm, so I got to see that whole world and how it worked. And I was always kind of on the outside because I was just doing, making coffee mugs and logos and all that stuff. So yeah, it's
Yes.
interesting. Um,
Hmm.
so let's dig into the book and your history. My ancestors came from Italy as well. They
Wow.
they came from Shaka, Sicily, and Naples, and I had a history. The first time I ever went to Italy in my
Hmm.
family's lineage, I was the first person to go back, and I had a pen pal in high school that was south of Florence at a little town called Castle Ferentio, and they owned a pizza place. It was kind of like an
Castelfrentano?
what's that?
Castelfrentano, Abruzzo?
It's south of Florence.
That's exactly where my family's from.
Wow.
That's the exact location of where my grandfather immigrated in this book.
So her name is Deborah Volterani. It was her name, and
Wow.
they had. I'll never forget being there in the restaurant and being the American kid that's trying to figure out all the language and the customs. I'm eating my food, and the old man, her dad, is across his table, and he just slams his hands down and said "Aspette," and he comes over and he grabs my hands and he's like, "This is how you do it." He couldn't take it anymore because I wasn't rolling the pasta up on my spoon. I was just going in. I didn't know any better. But they
Yeah.
taught me how to like appreciate all of the courses and everything that went in to the celebration of eating a meal. I just didn't grow up that way. So, anyway,
Wow.
that's fascinating. That's wild.
I know it's such a small world. Like you said the exact place, and I was like, what?
That's wild. And
Yeah.
and I think she still lives there. And the weird thing about it is she has this fascination with Robert Downey Jr. and has like traveled to America to go to all of his film premieres. And people think people, I work in a school district by day as an IT guy. All the
Uh-huh.
kids call me Iron Man. They call me Tony Stark. So it's so weird how this thing is
That's
gonna,
so funny. You
yeah.
know, my dad was a school administrator, like, that's what he went to college for, and the book even talks about, like, my grandfather wanted everyone in the family, and when my father, like, moved away to become a school administrator, he took, like, a better job. It was, like, a very big upset for my grandfather because he wanted us all there.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so, my father, he retired, and that's when, I mean, he owned the pizza place after my grandfather died in 1998. My father, he gave my father the pizza place, but my father wasn't super involved until about 5 years ago because when I went to see him, he was doing poorly. Like, he had just had surgery and it was like he retired. He didn't have anything to do. And I was like, "Dad, why don't you go back into the pizza shop and do that? Like, let's do it together. Like, I'll help you." And I was like, "I'll do the marketing." He was like, "I don't believe in marketing." And I was like, "Okay." So I
Yeah.
said, I'll do it for free. Like, I'll drive in with you and I can create videos and stuff when you can, work there. And he was like, "Okay." And then in like the travels, because we would drive back and forth, 15, 20 minutes, he started telling me all the stories.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we went to Italy together. We actually went to
Wow.
Italy together 3 times. So we
Cool.
went to Abruzzo, we saw the family's land, we met with the cousins, we ate, and it was just like it just became very inspiring for me to, like, really learn about, like, my family.
That's amazing. And that's the thing about going over to Italy that I didn't realize the antiquity, how young America is, and how this recipe for all the foods that we celebrate, the Italian cuisine, how it all started. Like pizza there was not anything like I had here. I mean, it was,
Yeah,
and in fact, when I came back, I started really cooking the way that the natives did. And it's like they don't use canned sauce, they don't do things that we do.
same.
It's all
Yeah.
fresh, organic, good, all of the ingredients. So yeah, it's wild how all of that got passed down. So what did you ultimately learn about your family and about this passion that you didn't realize before that was kind of revelatory for you in your life?
So, when my grandfather and his family traveled over and they came to the United States, they had nothing. I mean, nothing. And my great-grandfather and my grandfather went to school in the coal mines. Like, my grandfather was pulled out of school when he was probably, like, 12 or 13, and he worked in the coal mines, and at that time, the miners were really mistreated, and you had people in the town where they would have the Italians on one end, and they'd have, like, the Slovakians and the other people on the other end because they didn't want them to talk
Mhm.
and learn about some of the, like, inequities that were going on.
Yeah.
So, when I saw that and it was like, really, like, my grandfather went every day and was a coal miner. He had nothing. He saved his money in shoe boxes. And then when the coal mines closed, he saved enough money to, buy a building in Wimber, PA that Berwyn White Coal Company owned. And I think he paid like $700 or something for this building. And he ended up creating this like this local store. And then he created the pizza place. And 60 years later, that place is still going and he created it for our family. So
Wow.
it was just like for me to really see that hardship and then to see him go through and really achieve his dream when like he wasn't brought up in a situation where the parents were like, "Oh, let me pay for college." Like, "What do you want to do?"
Yep.
That wasn't the situation. Like with my daughter, I'm like, "Hey, where did you want to go?"
Yep.
He didn't have that.
Yep. Yeah. But it all started because he sacrificed and did that. He
Yeah.
created a lineage by proxy. Um, so let me ask you this: who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you in your life?
Probably my father. My father's really like, as a teenager, I didn't feel that way, but my father, like as an adult, he is my best friend.
Yeah.
Like he's been very like, stable for my family. He's always given me good advice and like he's an educator, like he worked in the school system, a superintendent, he was a basketball coach. And like I saw him like mentor and help kids. And like, when you're a teenager, you're like, you think your parents are just lame,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? But
Yep.
But as I grew up and I became really close with my father, like I really, really respected him.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, who would you love to meet and spend some time with?
Oh my gosh, that is I don't even know. That is a tough one. Um, Honestly, Robert De Niro.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm pretty fascinated by him.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
been around a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. His backstory is pretty amazing too. So speaking of pizza, what's your go-to? What's your favorite pizza?
Oh, my family's pizza, hands down.
So like pesto, what do you go for? What do you put on it?
Okay, so my family has it's a traditional pizza. It's a rectangular pizza, 15 slices,
Uh-huh.
and I eat it plain. It's that good.
Yeah.
It's so delicious. Now, if I want something different, they do like a round thin, it's called a Mike's pie,
Yeah.
hot peppers and pepperoni baked on.
Oh,
That's my
awesome.
second favorite. Yeah, I mean, we go like, I go there several times a year and film content, and our whole family, like we still have our aunts and our uncles and our cousins, and we all meet and we eat together. And it's like, it's not just like we're eating pizza, like that's what our family, that's how we, communicate. That's how we spend time together.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's been your inspiration to do all of the work that you do, to run your own agency, to write and to etch these stories? What is it that gets you up every day and motivates you to do this work and to also evolve as a human being?
Well, I was a single parent for 11 years to my daughter, and I had to really provide a life for both of us. And it was really important to me to set a good example for her and to show her that there's no limit on what you can do. So I built the marketing agency and I'm writing the book. And funny enough, she just started college this fall and she's going for marketing. And her job is she helps me do outreach and she helps me, like she's my booking assistant for my book because she wanted to have a job in marketing so she could start getting experience. So her and I are like little best friends. Like, we've been together through it all.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to like show her that like no matter what people go through, like you don't give up on your dream.
For sure. You know what's
Yeah.
strange about, and I think about my family lineage too, about, my ancestors coming to Ellis Island, and there's all of this rancor going on in politics right now about immigration and all of that. Isn't it kind of strange to think how much it was embraced and it was the backbone of this country at one point, and now it's kind of become this kind of vilified thing? Strange.
It's so strange because like everyone in the United States is an immigrant. Like my grandfather, they came over here for a better life.
Yeah, like how many people do you run into that can say genuinely they're 100% American? It,
I mean, I don't know of any.
it's a misnomer. It's like it doesn't
Yeah.
exist, you know?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's weird. So at the end of the day, what are you hoping the reader gets from the book, from your family history and from what you've put out there?
Well, first of all, hope to never give up on your dream, no matter what your circumstances are, you can do something to change them. A love of family, a love of food, and particularly a love of pizza.
So as a writer, what was the first book you read growing up that really parted the curtains and made you want to read more or write?
Oh, Where the Red Fern Grows.
Okay.
It's such a beautiful book.
Yeah.
Sometimes as an adult, I want to like read it again.
Yeah.
I just remember reading like, as a teenager and even as an adolescent, and it was like I'd get really lost in the stories.
Yeah.
And that's what I tried to create with this book. It's just something that was very positive where someone could really get lost in the story.
So this is kind of a beginning place. Do you have any other stories that you're trying to kind of hone in on and move on?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have. So the next phase of this is I'm going to create a children's book.
Okay.
Yeah, about pizza and, have it illustrated just because I think it would be really nice for like a child to get the same message, but in a different way.
Yeah.
And then I have a book. One of my next books I want to do is my mom grew up in Western PA and she started a jam company.
Okay.
And I really want to write about very like organic, sustainable, like we created this from nothing type of stories.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so at the end of the day, everyone I guess let me phrase it like this. Of all of these things that you've done and evolved into in your life, what are you the proudest of? Ultimately, the proudest of?
Being a mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the most important thing. That I mean, the way I was brought up Italian. Family was the most important thing. I have my parents, four brothers and sisters, nieces, nephews, my daughter. Like I really I wouldn't be where I am today without my family.
So what were the most revelatory things about going to Italy for the first time? What were some of the things that really captivated you, that stuck with you, that was so different about growing up in America and about your ancestral line?
Sure. So when I was 16, I went and lived there for a summer.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was really interesting because like the way of life and the speed of life is so different.
Hmm.
And America's like so fast paced. It's so in your face. And Italy's just like is much calmer. And then I went again, I think it was about 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, but my father took our entire family, my mom, all my brothers and sisters, my daughter. I mean, there was a group of like 12 of us, and we went for like 3 weeks to Italy, and my dad planned the whole trip. And it was just really enjoying like being together. Like we went and we rode bikes through this little town called Bonassola, and we ate pesto, and we went swimming, and it was just like, we visited our family's land, and it was just very like beautiful and meaningful.
Yeah.
And here is like was just like work, work, work,
Uh-huh.
you know, work out, exercise, work,
Yep.
money, meeting, right?
That's
Right.
it. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, the pace is totally different. And the antiquity over there, like you realize, like especially when I went to Rome, like the beginnings of civilization are very evident.
Yeah.
And then when you come back here, you realize how young we are.
Yeah, yeah, we love Rome. We spent an
Yeah.
entire 2 days in Rome, and we just walked. That's the other thing is like the food is so clean, and you're just walking everywhere and you're taking it all in, and the art, and it's just, I feel like it's just a very genuine place.
Yeah. I remember that when I went to, so going from that small town south of Florence, I went down to Rome and I was so excited, and it was late in the day. I really wanted to go see the Colosseum and get in there.
Yeah.
So I'm walking and I'm going and I'm doing my thing and I got lost, and I was staying by the Vatican, and I was getting into sketchy areas. I didn't know the language well. I don't know how I did it, but I finally made it back. I remember kissing the building. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm back." But I do remember how absolutely arrestive at that point the Vatican was. And I went there one night and the moon was out, and I actually went down and saw an opera singer, and
Mhm.
it was a very cheap ticket, and I got in and it was like a Vivaldi concerto, and it was just mind-blowing because my dad, growing up, if my dad got really emotional, Pavarotti was playing and it was loud.
Yeah.
So
I
I
get it.
never, I never got into the whole operatic thing. Like you said, when you're a teenager and you see your parents, you're just kind of like, all right, that's what they do, and you just kind of move on. But there was a strength being in that homeland and on the soil, seeing, and it was amazing. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. My dad was the same with Andrea Bocelli. He used to
Uh-huh.
cook every Sunday.
Yep.
He would play that.
Yep.
And even I remember like when my grandfather passed away, like that was on all the time
Hmm.
after that time. And even now my dad listens to it all the time.
That's it. It gets passed
Yeah.
down for sure. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, everyone that reads your book, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I believe I'm someone who genuinely wants to create a positive effect in other people's lives. That was really why I wrote this book, is I wanted to tell this positive, uplifting story. And the thing that makes me happy, like more happy than anything else, is when somebody reaches out to me and says, like, I loved your book. I couldn't put it down. Like even like funny enough, my some of my grandmother's siblings, my grandmother had 13 siblings and they're in their 90s, and they're reading the book And so their kids are reaching out to me on Facebook, like, my father read the book and he loved it. He couldn't put it down. Like, we miss them so much. Like, it reminds me so much of your grandparents. Like that's what makes me happier than anything else.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to pick up the book, reach out, any of the good business in your world, where do they go?
They can search it. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, it's anywhere you can buy a book. There's also the website, astoryaboutpizza.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. It's great to kind of walk through virtually walk through the streets of Italy a little bit and to get the
Yeah.
stories. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
Yeah, it was.